The individuals have been charged since 2013 for conduct related to foreign fighter activity and homegrown violent extremism. General Lynch, this committee has previously heard how ISIL and other terrorist organizations field potential recruits in publicly accessible social networking sites via encrypted messaging platforms and also over voice-over internet apps. Are these encrypted private messaging platforms and also voice-over internet apps hampering the ability of the department to quickly ascertain and address threats to national security, and if so, in what ways?
Well, Congressman, thank you for the question. Certainly when individuals choose to move from open means of communication to those that are encrypted, it can cause a disruption in our ability to use lawful legal process to intercept those communications, and does give us concern about being able to gather the evidence that we need to continue in our ongoing mission for the protection of the American people.
How so?
Well, with respect to individuals in this country, what we have seen is communications. This is in regard to specific cases. We've seen communications between them and individuals urging them to commit acts of violence, acts of terrorism, and then those individuals dropping from one type of communication to an encrypted method of communication, and we no longer have visibility into those discussions. And so,
well, when you say no longer have visibility into those discussions, can you break that down and explain exactly what you mean?
Certainly. Typically we would, with a lawful court order, go to a communications provider and focusing specifically on individuals against whom we had probable cause to believe were involved in criminal activity, including terrorist activity, obtain the authorization to review their communications in the past as well as on an ongoing basis. When individuals move to an encrypted platform, one that is not accessible by the provider themselves, then we have a situation where we're not able to have our court orders handled in the typical way. That is to say, we're not able to receive that information and ascertain what these individuals are planning, and also, just as importantly, with whom they're planning these actions. And so we rely on other methods and means, but that is a loss of an important means and an important law enforcement tool.
Is there any way that the department can overcome the use of encrypted data and voice communications by terrorists who are trying to recruit within the borders of the United States, or a terrorist plot taking place between persons inside the United States? Take, for example, the terrorist incident in Paris this past weekend, where I heard one expert say that he would be shocked if the terrorists were not using encrypted communications, perhaps even during the terrorist events. How can the department thwart that kind of activity taking place here on United States soil, given the fact that we have these encrypted communications?
Well, certainly it makes it very challenging. Our approach has been to work with the electronic companies, the internet providers, on a case-by-case basis, and help them find a way, or work with them to find a way to allow them to respond to the valid legal process. And certainly we're having conversations with the industry as a whole to make sure that they can in fact comply with legal process and provide us the information that we need. We rely on other means of surveillance, other means of gathering intelligence about those individuals and their associates, but it does cause us the loss of a very valuable source of information.
Okay, with that, I will yield back, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The gentleman from Georgia yields back. The chair will now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Attorney General. Appreciate your being here. Obviously, people are rather sensitive to potential terrorism, especially since ISIS is known for keeping their word when they make threats, at least as often as they can. And we had a witness sometime back, the FBI director at that time, Director Mueller, and I was asking him about investigations at the mosque in Boston where the Tsarnaevs attended, and he indicated that the FBI had an outreach program with that mosque where they would commune together, but they never actually investigated at the mosque whether or not the Tsarnaevs had been radicalized. Even after Russia gave the FBI a heads up that the older Tsarnaev had been radicalized, they never asked any questions of the people there. And it's I know I've been through materials with FBI agents that have been cleaned out from the teaching materials at the Justice Department, and for some ridiculous reason they were classified, so we had to do it in a closed setting. But it appears to me that FBI agents, justice officials, are not even being allowed to be taught what it is that radical Islamists believe. Not even perhaps that Osama bin Laden indicated that the Egyptian martyr, Muslim Brotherhood member Qutb wrote milestones that actually helped radicalize him. Nobody knew enough to go to the mosque and ask, has Tsarnaev been reading Qutb? Have you seen him talking about or heard him talking about milestones? It seems like we blinded, as one intelligence official told me, we blinded ourselves of the ability to see our enemy. So I was also surprised, since Director Mueller was FBI director after al-Amoudi was arrested based on his understanding information that Britain gave us, but he's doing 23 years for supporting terrorism. He didn't know al-Amoudi is the one who was at the bottom of starting that mosque. We know that apparently al-Amoudi helped in both the Clinton and Bush White House find Muslims that al-Amoudi said could be trusted to work in those White Houses. And I'm just wondering, since we now know that al-Amoudi supported terrorism, we know that at least the Tsarnaevs, perhaps others who've been radicalized, worshipped at that mosque, has the outreach program been terminated with the al-Amoudi begun mosque in Boston? And has there been any investigation into people that al-Amoudi placed in the Clinton and Bush White House? Now that we know he supported terrorism, he's doing 23 years. Do you know of any such investigations?
Mr. Congressman, I don't have the information that you're requesting, but certainly what I can say is that you have touched upon the issue that all of us in law enforcement deal with as we work not only to protect the American people, but to counter violent extremism that does pull in young people like this.
Well, and I appreciate your calling it violent extremism. Did you have a degree in Islamic studies?
I'm sorry, sir.
I really don't know. Did you have any degrees in Islamic studies?
No, sir.
Well, there's a guy named al-Baghdadi who happens to be head of ISIS, who has a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in Islamic studies from the University of Baghdad. He perhaps is a better expert than you and I, and he says ISIS is Islamic. And so I think we should take the word of an expert. It certainly doesn't represent the views of all Muslims, thank God. But I would encourage you to take another look at the Justice Department training materials, take another look at your outreach program, and look back and investigate who al-Amoudi placed in those White Houses to see if they're still around. The FBI completely dropped the ball on Tsarnaev and it concerns Americans. They may be dropping the ball on the Syrians as we speak. My time's expired. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.